There is a number that runs all the way through your Bible like a thread pulled through every page. It appears at the founding of Israel, in the gold and gems on the high priest's chest, in the stones Joshua piled up by the Jordan, in the disciples Jesus called from the boats. It appears in the broken pieces of bread the disciples picked up after a miracle. It appears in the gates of the city John saw at the end of Revelation. It appears in the foundations under that same city, and in the stars he sees on a crown in chapter 12, and in the number of the saved measured out 12 times 12 times 1,000. The number is 12, and by the end of this video, you will hear the whole Bible humming with it. 12 is not a random count. It is the Bible's number for governance, completeness, and a people belonging to God. In this lesson, we read every major appearance of 12 in the Scriptures: the tribes, the stones, the disciples, the baskets, the gates. By the last one, the pattern will be unmistakable. The number begins with a family. In Genesis, Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, has 12 sons. The text names them in order: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin. 4 mothers: Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, Zilpah. 12 boys. And on his deathbed in Genesis 49, Jacob calls his sons around him and speaks a blessing over each one that the text says will shape what becomes of them in the latter days. Those 12 sons become 12 tribes. The book of Exodus opens with their names. The book of Numbers organizes them into a marching order around the tabernacle. 3 tribes on the east, 3 on the south, 3 on the west, 3 on the north. The book of Joshua divides the land among them in 12 allotments. The book of Judges chronicles their crises tribe by tribe. The whole identity of Israel is 12. But the number is not always 12 in a simple way. The tribe of Levi is set apart for priestly service and receives no territorial inheritance. So when the land is divided, only 11 tribes get land. To keep the count at 12, the sons of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim each become a half-tribe in their own right. Joseph is split into 2. Levi is set aside, and the math returns to 12. The number holds. That is not an accident. The number 12 is preserved across every reorganization of the people. When tribes split, when Levi steps out, when Joseph divides, the count comes back to 12. The text is treating the number itself as load-bearing, and the symbolic weight is governance. In the ancient Near East, 12 was the standard count for completeness in time and rule. The year has 12 months. The day and the night were divided into 12 hours each. The zodiac has 12 signs. To say 12 in the world Jacob's family was living in was to say the whole of it, the complete cycle, the full rule, the entire structure. And here is the detail that opens up the whole pattern. The Hebrew word for tribe is shevet. It also means rod, staff, scepter. The same word for a tribe of people is the word for the king's rod of authority. So when you read the 12 tribes, you are reading the 12 scepters of Israel, 12 rods of rule, 12 seats at the same table. The number is not just demographic, it is constitutional. And when the prophet Ezekiel in chapter 48 lays out the future restoration of Israel, the land is divided 12 ways again. The tribes do not collapse into one undifferentiated people. They remain 12. The number is not a stage in Israel's history. It is the structure of Israel's identity. So 12 starts with 12 sons, and it never quite leaves. And there is a subtler layer here. The 4 mothers of these 12 sons matter. Leah, the unloved wife, gives Jacob 6. Rachel, the loved wife, gives him 2. Bilhah, Rachel's servant, gives him 2. Zilpah, Leah's servant gives him 2. The number 12, the constitutional number of God's people, is built out of 4 sets of pain. Out of women who were rivals, out of children born into a household of jealousy and grief. The structure of Israel is not the product of a sentimental founding. It is the product of a strange, painful, half-fractured family. And God puts His governing number on top of it anyway. That is the foundation under the rest of the Bible. The number becomes physical. In Exodus chapter 28, God commands Moses to make the priestly garments for Aaron. On the chest of the high priest is a breastplate mounted with 12 stones set in gold. Each stone bears the name of one of the tribes. Exodus chapter 28 verse 21 says, "And the stones shall be with the names of the children of Israel, 12, according to their names, like the engravings of a signet. Every one with his name shall they be, according to the 12 tribes." Read that slowly. The high priest walks into the presence of God wearing the names of the 12 tribes on his chest. He does not enter alone. He carries them with him. Every prayer he prays, every sacrifice he offers, every step he takes into the holy place, 12 names against his heart. And then take the number to the Jordan River. In Joshua chapter 4, Israel has just crossed the Jordan on dry ground. The priests carrying the ark stand in the middle of the riverbed, and the waters pile up upstream. The whole nation walks across. And before they leave, God tells Joshua to send 12 men, one from each tribe, to lift a stone from the middle of the Jordan and carry it to the camp. Joshua chapter 4 verse 9 says, "He also set up 12 stones in the middle of the river itself where the priests stood." 12 stones on the shore, 12 stones in the water. The point of the stones is given in verse 6. "That this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask in time to come, saying, 'What mean ye by these stones?' the stones answer." The stones tell the next generation that 12 tribes crossed 12 abreast through a riverbed that should not have been dry. Then take it further. In 1 Kings chapter 18, the prophet Elijah stands on Mount Carmel to confront the prophets of Baal. He builds an altar to the Lord. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 31 says, "And Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be thy name." 12 stones again. In the middle of the most public spiritual showdown in the Old Testament, the prophet builds his altar out of 12 stones, one for each tribe of the broken, half-faithful people he is praying for. The fire falls on 12 stones. The water boils off 12 stones. The whole of Israel is being claimed back to God 12 stones at a time. The number keeps showing up wherever the whole people of God need to be represented. The high priest carries them. The riverbed marks them. The prophet rebuilds the altar out of them. 12 is the count of God's people gathered. And the gemstones on the breastplate are not random. Exodus chapter 28 lists them in order: sardius, topaz, carbuncle, emerald, sapphire, diamond, ligure, agate, amethyst, beryl, onyx, jasper. 12 stones, each different, each precious, each engraved with the name of one tribe. The diversity is not a problem to be flattened, it is the design. The God who organizes His people by 12 does not organize them by uniformity. Each name has its own stone. Each tribe has its own color. Each story has its own light. And all 12 sit together on the chest of the one who walks into the Holy of Holies. 1,000 years later, give or take, the number lands in Galilee. A Jewish carpenter walks along the Sea of Galilee. He calls fishermen out of their boats. He calls a tax collector out of a customs booth. He calls a zealot and a man named Bartholomew, and a man named Philip, and a man named Thomas. The Gospel of Mark in chapter 3 says he chose 12. Mark chapter 3 verse 14 says, "And he ordained 12, that they should be with him, and that he might send them forth to preach." 12. Read the number against the Old Testament background, and you cannot miss what is happening. Jesus is not picking helpers. He is not picking students. He is picking a number that everyone listening would have heard. 12 tribes, 12 sons of Jacob, 12 foundations of Israel, and now 12 again, walking with him along the Galilee shoreline. He is refounding the people. The Gospel of Matthew lists them in chapter 10. Simon Peter and his brother Andrew, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot. 12 men, named, listed, set apart. And when one of them falls away, when Judas hangs himself after the betrayal, the very first thing the apostles do in the book of Acts is replace him. Acts chapter 1. The 11 gather, the disciples nominate 2 candidates, they pray, and the lot falls on Matthias. The number returns to 12 before the day of Pentecost begins. The Holy Spirit will not fall on 11. The Spirit falls on 12. Read the parallel. The high priest wore 12 names into the holy place. The apostles carry 12 names into the new covenant. And in Matthew 19 verse 28, Jesus makes the parallel explicit. He turns to the 12 and says, "Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." 12 thrones, 12 tribes, 12 apostles. The architecture of the whole future kingdom is being assembled out of one number. That is not a coincidence. That is the foundation. And there is a tension here. 12, not 13. When Judas falls, the apostles do not just absorb the betrayal and move on with 11. They restore the number. The number itself is part of what it means to be the people of God. To lose one and stay at the smaller count would be to break the covenantal architecture. So Matthias is added, and the symmetry holds. Later in Acts, when Paul appears, he is treated as a different category, an apostle, but not a replacement of any of the 12. The 12 are sealed. They have already been picked. The future of the church has more apostles in it, but the constitutional core remains 12. Then take the number into a miracle. All 4 Gospels record the feeding of the 5,000. It is the only miracle, apart from the resurrection itself, that appears in all 4. Matthew 14, Mark 6, Luke 9, John 6. A crowd gathers in the wilderness. The disciples cannot feed them. A boy offers 5 loaves and 2 fish. Jesus takes them, blesses them, breaks them, and gives them to the disciples. The crowd eats until they are full. And then the count. Matthew 14 verse 20. And they did all eat and were filled, and they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. Stop on that line. The text could have said they took up some leftovers. The text could have said they had more than enough. The text instead specifies the number. 12 baskets. 1 for each disciple, 1 for each tribe, 1 for each apostolic foundation. The number is doing theological work in the middle of a feeding story. What the text is showing is that the bread Jesus breaks is enough for all 12 tribes of Israel. Not enough for some, not enough for most. 12 baskets full with surplus. The miracle is not just a meal. It is a sign that the people of God will be fed from the hand of the carpenter. Every tribe, every name on the breastplate, every stone on the altar. And then read the next miracle. The feeding of the 4,000 in Matthew 15 and Mark 8. Different setting, different crowd, different number. After that miracle, the disciples gather 7 baskets full. 7 is the Bible's number for completeness in creation, the 7 days, the 7 nations of Canaan, the 7 seas. The first miracle gathers 12 baskets, Israel. The second gathers 7, the nations of the world. The disciples were being taught, basket by basket, that the bread of Jesus is for everyone. Notice the framing. 2 miracles, 2 numbers, 12 and 7. The full extent of God's people on either side of the ancient world's count. And the Gospel of John makes the symbolism explicit in chapter 6, where Jesus says, "I am the bread of life." The fragments left over from the loaves are not table scraps. They are the picture of what he is, the bread that feeds the 12 and the 7, the bread that does not run out, the bread that is with leftovers. There is also a quiet liturgical detail in the feeding stories. Jesus takes, he blesses, he breaks, he gives. The Greek verbs are exactly the same 4 verbs the same Gospels use to describe Jesus at the Last Supper. The crowd of 5,000 is being fed in the same shape as the disciples around the table. The bread of the wilderness and the bread of the upper room are made by the same hands. And the leftovers from the wilderness are 12 baskets, one for every apostle who, a few months later, will sit at that table and learn what the bread becomes. That is the third place the number lands. And then the number opens up at the end of the Bible. In Revelation 21, the Apostle John sees a vision of the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. He describes the city in dimensions and materials and gates, and the number 12 runs through every measurement. Revelation 21:12. And had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. 12 gates with 12 angels and the names of the 12 tribes. Revelation 21:14. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. 12 foundations with the names of the 12 apostles. So the gates are the tribes, the foundations are the apostles. The whole city is built on a doubled count of 12. Israel above, the church below, or the other way around. Every commentator argues about which direction the architecture runs, and that argument is part of the point. The New Jerusalem is the people of God in both Testaments, joined into one city, the wall of which is 12 everywhere you look. Then verse 21 says there are 12 gates of 12 pearls. Each gate is a single pearl. Read that for a moment. The Greek word for gate is pylon, an enormous arched entrance. Each one is carved from a single pearl. The pearls are pulled from the deep, from the wounded oyster, from years of irritation worked into beauty. The gates to the city of God are made out of the kind of grief the world has tried to drown. And in chapter 22, verse 2, the tree of life in the middle of the city bears 12 manner of fruits, yielding her fruit every month. 12 fruits, 12 months. The tree is on a rotation that never runs out. Then go back to chapter 7. The 144,000 sealed servants of God are organized as 12,000 from each of 12 tribes. 12 squared multiplied by 1,000. The number escalates by being multiplied against itself. The complete people of God times the complete people of God on the scale of 1,000. And then Revelation 12, verse 1. The woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. The woman is the people of God. The crown is 12. The sky above her is 12. The future below her is 12. Wherever you turn the page, the count is the same. That is the architecture of the Bible's last vision, The number that started with 12 sons in Genesis ends with 12 gates in Revelation. The whole story is held together with the same 12. And the dimensions of the city in Revelation 21 multiply the count one more time. The wall is 144 cubits, which is 12 times 12. The city is 12,000 stadia on each side, a perfect cube of 12,000. Every measurement of the New Jerusalem is divisible by 12. The whole architecture is the same number, raised, multiplied, repeated, until the city itself is the number. The New Jerusalem is not just a place where the 12 tribes live, it is the geometric expression of 12. The number is the shape. 12 sons, 12 tribes, 12 stones in the Jordan, 12 stones on Aaron's chest, 12 stones on Elijah's altar, 12 disciples, 12 baskets of leftovers, 12 thrones, 12 gates, 12 foundations, 12 fruits, 12 stars on a crown, 12 times 12 times 1,000. The number is not a code, it is a thread. The Bible is telling you the same thing across every page. The people of God belong to a structure God Himself built. They are governed. They are complete. They are named. They are not lost in the count. The high priest carries them on his chest. The prophet builds his altar out of them. The carpenter calls them out of their boats. The Lamb seats them on 12 thrones in the city that is the bride of the Lamb. You are not standing outside the count. You are inside it. You always were. If this opened the pattern for you, if you have read these numbers your whole life and never seen them all together, leave a comment with the 12 that surprised you most. Subscribe to keep going deeper. Share this with someone who would love it. Even one word in the comments helps the channel more than you would think. God bless you.